Welcome back to my channel, Amazing Creative. Today I have 7 prompts to help you to make some art. So let's work through them together and you can see where I go with the prompts to hopefully kick off some ideas for you as you work on them. But don't forget, your art is all about you and you don't have to do the same as me at all. In fact, I would strongly encourage that you just go with your gut and do what feels right for you. And use the prompts as a jumping off place to get you flowing through your art today. So this exercise is perfect for your art journaling, but it also works if you're on canvas or in a sketchbook or just on a piece of paper, whatever you like to use. And I'm working in my junk journal for mine, so I've also grabbed some acrylic paint, some water reactive colour pencils, some clear drying glue, old book pages, and a graphite pencil too, and of course brushes and scissors as well. The list of exactly what I'm using is in the description under the video, but swap out whatever you've actually got in your art stash. You can just use these prompts with whatever you like to use. Okay, so let's get painting. So prompt number 1, start with a dark colour. And I've picked a page in my junk journal that already has some dark colour on here. You can see it's just in patches, it's just left over from some other projects. And if you're working on a fresh page or a canvas, then you might want to put a quick layer of dark colour on here, just very, very quickly with acrylic paint, something that's not going to move when you layer over the top, and let it dry completely before you start the next layer. Prompt number 2, add a light colour and some white. Now for this layer I've picked a lighter colour, I've matched it up with white, and this layer needs to be quite thick because we want to spread it over the surface, letting the colour that you've chosen just mix in places with the white. But you don't need to over mix it, you don't need it to all look exactly the same. A little bit of variation works really well here. And that's why I'm kind of mixing it on my actual surface. So it's going to help a little later on if you've got some patches that are unmixed too, but don't overthink it, just try and get a nice thick layer of acrylic paint down here. The surface that I'm working on has a little bit of torn page that I've torn out for something else, and I'm just going to use my paint as a glue to stick that to the surface. This whole surface is around A4 or letter size in total, so it doesn't take long to cover it. If you're working on a larger surface, or maybe it's a warmer day where you are, then you might want to do this in sections because you don't want the paint to dry too quickly. And that kind of brings me on to prompt number 3, which is to scratch out a pattern. So when you have some coverage down, grab another paintbrush or something that you can scrape and scratch into that wet paint with. And you just want to go ahead and add in some random patterns and mark making into that thick wet paint. Don't be afraid to scrape right on back to that first dark layer, and you can see now why we had that in. It's going to add a little bit of variation across your surface. And that just gives you a nice textured look. So some of my white paint didn't mix with the colour, and I've got little bits of white peeking through here as I scratch into it as well, and that's great if that happens, but it was more luck than design. If you're doing yours in sections, then once you've done this to one section, go ahead and add some more thick paint to another section, then scratch a pattern into that, and keep on going until you've got the whole surface covered with both colour and scratch pattern. You're now going to need to let this layer dry completely, and that might take a little bit of time depending on how thick it is. So it could be anything from an hour to be touch dry to a few hours or even overnight. So what you could do is set up a few of these on different pages with different colours or different canvases, whatever you're using, and that will give you a range to play around with. When it is dry, we can come in and start with our prompt number 4, and this is to draw or paint a shape. And for this, what I'm using is a water reactive pencil or crayon, or you could swap in using watercolour paint if you prefer, or if you don't have water reactive pencils or crayons. So what I'm doing for this prompt is drawing out a shape, something big and open, and I've gone with a leafy floral look. but you could literally have anything you want. You could keep it abstract and use geometric shapes like circles, squares, triangles. Or you could go with another theme, put in some butterflies or birds or trees, anything that's appealing to you today. I think I'm going to add 2 to my page and put them in opposing corners just to add a bit of dynamic movement across my page, but you could of course stick to one shape or fill the whole surface with shapes. If you're using water-reactive pencils and crayons, then add some water to make the colour really pop out from that line. And you might even want to layer up a few times, add a few more pencil marks and then more water, just to make the shapes really stand out. Once you have your shapes down, let's move on to prompt number 5, which is to have some fun with collage. So I just want to add a little bit of texture. For this, I've cut out some pages from one of my junk journals. I'm going to use that, but I'm also going to pair it with some old book pages too, because I kind of like that contrast between the colours of these two types of paper. So think about what you want to use. You could use old photos, you could use pattern paper, you could even use some of your leftover paper from other projects. Or how about some product labels? Whatever you like, just have some fun with it. I'm sticking mine down in place with matte medium and putting a layer on the surface, then a layer on the back of the collage piece. I stick the two pieces, the two wet sides together, and then add another layer of matte medium over the top, and this will get them stuck firmly in place. And it decreases the chance of trapping air bubbles, plus it means that I won't get any curling or lifting edges. So it works really well if you want a flat piece. Let the medium dry, at least a touch dry, before moving on. If you feel that you need to touch up your shapes, then go ahead and do that. So my collage pieces are now touch dry, but still a little bit wet on the shape outlines. So I'm just going to be very careful when I do this next part, as any of those wet areas, well, they might catch or rip, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to take a little bit of care. And then move on to prompt number 6, which is some pencil doodling. For this, I've grabbed a graphite pencil. This is not a water active pencil, it's just an ordinary graphite pencil, quite a soft one, and I want to doodle in some texture. A soft graphite pencil like a 2B or higher is perfect for this, so try and avoid harder pencils, but if the only thing you've got is an HB pencil, then go with it, and just be gentle with your mark making, and don't be afraid to add multiple layers over the top to let that texture sort of pop out a bit more and stand out. Of course, there's always other options. You could swap in a coloured pencil here if you'd prefer and have fun adding some more colour. Whatever works for you and your piece. So go ahead and doodle whatever you like here. You could add in patterns, you could add more shapes or words or scribbles, whatever works for you. Okay, so now I think we're going to go for prompt number 7, and that is to add a contrasting colour. So before you add this colour, just take a couple of minutes to look at your piece. Are there any areas that could just do with a pop of contrast? Something to differentiate them from the rest of the piece. So look for sections that have been cut up by lines. They're very handy for adding a bit of pop of contrast. Like I have this area here that is partially boxed in by the stem line and that pencil doodle line. And I think that's where I'm going to put my first pop of contrast colour. So you might have other shapes that you would like to fill with your pop of colour, or you could just add this pop of contrast randomly on the page as well. It's up to you. Have a play with it and see what you like. I've gone very loose and dribbly with my contrasting colour, but again, you could easily make yours more of a block if you want. And if you did set up a few of these pieces at the start, then you've got some other ones to try out the different styles and different ways on. Right, I'm just going to add a bit more definition to my lines, and I'm using a darker colour pencil, just slightly darker. This surface is now dry, so it's just going to add a little bit more detail and make those shapes pop out a bit more. Don't forget to tag me in on your social media shares, as I would love to come along and have a look at where you went with these prompts today. I had lots of fun sharing them with you, and I can't wait to see what art you made with them. In the meantime, if you are looking for some more mixed media art inspiration, then watch these videos next, and I'll see you over there.